Thank you very much. Sorry, it's me again. I wanted to show you, in addition to all the speeches in the morning, a different way of looking into data about social dimension of students and graduates and the follow-up of that. But I have to say, I really appreciated the session in the morning and the work Dragan and Mirko did, because we from the Eurostudent Consortium, we always encourage the countries to make use of the data, to do more analysis. There's far more in than just the international comparison. We, for example, in Austria, we produced 10 national reports out of it, focusing on certain groups, on mobility, on students with kids, and so on, because it's such a rich database. And the countries have the possibility to add national questions, which are hot topics in the country, and which are not entering the international comparison then, but for their way of analyzing later on. So it was really good to see that the data is used, and hopefully there will be more research with the data. On the other hand, it's really quite sad that I learned recently that Serbia probably will not take part in the next round of Eurostudent. So then even more you have to make use of the existing data, because for the next years there will not be a new data. New data, this, what I'm going to show you now, is what we call tracking of students, and we call it since many years so, but currently the word tracking is used, I think, for everything. The European Commission mixed it up and use it now. Everything, when you look on students now, it's tracking. Tell you what we mean by this tracking. We follow each individual student, anonymously, of course, on his or her way through the whole higher education system. And this is based on data of student registry, so it's not surveys, and that's why we call it tracking. We really follow them with registry data, and therefore I have the data of all the students. In a survey, always I only have a certain amount of respondents, but here it's really based on all the students. And this is not possible in many countries, but in some countries this is possible. We match the student registry with data from the social security system. And then we can, by this, we can track the graduates on the labor market. But we still have all the information, what did they study, where do they come from, how old are they, and so on, what the universities knew about the students, and we can follow them later on the labor market. Many Eastern European countries are using this for graduate tracking. Poland has a huge thing out of this. Hungary has a great database about this. Lithuania just starting doing similar things. Of course now what we did is, I would say in Austria this was kind of a bottom-up initiative. Like 10 years ago we started as a research team, we started working with 1 or 2 universities and faculties there because they wanted to learn more about their students. And only recently the ministry is encouraging other universities to do the same and to support them in joining forces and make a national project out of it. That's why I only have now Austrian data, and the Austrian situation, when you will see the data, is a very special one, so I think I should tell a few words about it. Still in Austria, that has changed recently, but in this data, mostly all the programs have to follow an open access policy. So when an applicant has a matura, the university has to accept them. And regardless how many, there's no limit. And the number of study places is not limited by funding. So they have to take everybody who applies, principally. On the other hand, the students also can enroll as many programs as they want, because all of those programs have to accept them. And students do that. They enroll 3, 4, 5 programs at the same time. At the universities, there is a non-university sector which is smaller and working a little bit different, but here I'm focusing on the public universities, which is the largest sector. Mostly the students organize the schedule in the semester on themselves. There's a recommendation from the university which lectures you should follow, but it's not a school. It's not like a class and 30 people walk together every year to the next class. You do what you want. You enroll for a lecture or you don't. So that's why you do 2 lectures in a semester. Next semester you do 5 lectures, just as you want. And there's, so far, Ministry wants to change that now, there's also no limit. You can do this for 40 semesters. They will never kick you out for this, so far. That is one of the reasons why we had, as shown previously, a high share of students over 30 years old. They organize their life studying and working at the same time on their own, because the university allows them to be so flexible. They don't have to sit 25 hours in a classroom like in a school. On the other hand, we also have a very high share of international students. More than 20% of the student population are international students, but their history and everything is so different that they are excluded in the analysis I'm looking at here. And this whole system, open access, everybody can enroll whatever they want and they go or they don't go, that generates a huge amount, what I recently learned in the Netherlands, they call it ghost students. So they are in the statistics, but they are not in the lecture hall. And we have in the first year students, about 40% of the beginners do not make a single credit point in the first semester. And later on as well. That means we have a high dropout rate comparatively, but the question is also if the students dropped in the beginning, if even in the first semester they didn't do anything, and we have comparatively very long study durations. But also in the statistics, when we look on individual programs, we only focus on what the students are doing in this program. But they can be enrolled in many others, and they can be active there and graduate there and so on. So that lowers the success rates in a program, because maybe only 30% finish this program, but they finish another one at the same time. So it's a little bit a mess. Don't look too much on the numbers. I just want to present the method and how to make use of it. So that is kind of the basic charts, how we do this student tracking. That is all the bachelors who started studying in the winter term 2008-2009, and only those who for the first time enrolled, because those who changed and enrolled later, it's also a different pattern. On the x-axis we have the semesters, so we cover them here, 14 semesters, 7 years. It's already quite long for bachelors. And in every semester, the 3 lines add up to 100%. That's always the cohort that started together in 2008-2009. So in the first semester, all 100% are enrolled in the program. And then the line going down from top to the bottom, that is still how many are still enrolled. And then you have the blue line slightly increasing in the middle. Those are the ones who quitted all programs all over the university system. If they change the program, they are still enrolled. If they switch to another university, they are still enrolled. But if they leave the university system at all, then they are part of this blue line. And only the black line in the bottom, which increases from the 6th semester on, those are the ones who graduated from that, from any kind of program. Even they might have switched in between or whatsoever, but they started studying in 2008, and then finally they graduated from something. And at the end, you see after 7 years, the line of graduation is still increasing. For bachelor, it's not a medical doctor program in long term. After 7 years, 51% graduated, 30% dropped out completely, but 19% are still enrolled. And we can estimate that maybe half of them will drop out and half of them will graduate. So, but this is just the basic pattern of what we do here. And we call the ones who are enrolled, that's the retention rate, then we have the dropout rate, and then we have the success rate. And to make it easier, I just pick out certain rates now. This is, for example, the dropout rate by gender. You can split it up. It's the same group of students. Then you see that at the end, if we wait for a long time, they are nearly the same. So there's not much difference. But the females tend to drop out earlier. And the males sit longer in the system, but at the end they also drop out. And it's actually the same with the success. So females are the majority of the students. The success rate of females is higher, but even if they do not succeed and drop out, then they make the decision earlier than the men. The men sit longer and wait what will happen. And after many years, they catch up with the females. Age at beginning of studying, first time enrollment. And you clearly can see what a huge impact, this is the success rate now, what a huge impact the age at beginning has for the success. So the youngest group below 21 at time when they started studying, they have a success rate from over 50%, but those who were already older than 30% only reach a success rate of 30%. So that's nearly half, and depends on age. And that, in our case, depends highly on the combination of studying and working. And how well can you organize this, and is it really possible or not? Because we also do not have a part-time status at the universities, at least. We have a very differentiated school system. Many different types of matura, many different professional academic schools and so on, and they all entitle you to go to university. But the performance of the graduates of these different schools is also quite different than at the university. So we have, for example, the academic matura, that would be, is there a pointer somewhere? Yeah. The academic matura, that is the gymnasium, probably known here as well, and they are here in the middle. They are catching up only after 14 semesters with the professional schools as well. The other ones have made a business school, they made a technical school, or any other kind of school. And mostly, if you do a technical school, then they go to technical university. When they did a business school, then they go to business programs at the university. So they have some pre-knowledge. But those coming from gymnasia, they're lacking this specialized knowledge. So that's a little bit, they're lacking behind. But also, there's a social bias behind. In academic schools, we have more students from upper class. And the parents have the money. So they don't care if the kids study quickly or take a little bit longer or go 3 months to South America for traveling around or whatsoever. And in the other, they are also in the professional schools, because the parents, if they are not from this upper class, if they did not study, if they have less money, then they always pressure the kids, you have to learn something which is useful on the labor market. That's why don't go to the gymnasium, go to this professional school and become already electrical engineer, start learning electrical engineer at the age of 15, 16. And then they finish, okay, now you can continue at the university, but quickly, we cannot support you for 7 years for a bachelor or so. These are one of the reasons. So it looks like it's a school type, but hidden behind the school type is also a social issue. And that is the same here, the light blue line. These are the students from the second chance route. So they left school at the age of 15, made a 3-year apprenticeship program, most of them at least, and then they had to pass a different exam, similar to a matura, and they had to do evening classes preparing for that because they were out of school for several years, and then they come back. And we are quite proud that this number is increasing, but when it comes to success, they are still lagging a lot behind. So this second way is widening access, but it's not yet really widening completion, so to say. And then there's a small group of other certificates where performs very similar. What else can you do with this data? We compare different cohorts, always referring to the time when they started studying. And then you can see that suddenly in the middle of this, it's 12 years at least, 12 different cohorts we observe, suddenly something happens. So that this is the dropout rate again now. Suddenly the dropout rate jumped a lot, increased a lot. That was the years of the financial crisis, actually. And in this system with an open access, that means financial crisis, companies are not hiring young people. So the young people went to university, and the universities had to accept them because of this open access system. But in usual economic situations, they would have not going to university. So in these cohorts, we have really a very high dropout rate, and we estimate, though there were many thousand more students beginning in those years, 2009, 2010, the peak of the crisis. But as soon as the economy recovered, they left the university because originally they probably, we can only assume, we didn't ask them. So this is one thing, why we have this widening gap. But now the economy has recovered and the dropout rates stay that high. And this is certain political measures because the government wants to reduce these kind of students, and if they drop out, they should drop out as early as possible and not after 5 years or 6 years. And then they introduced, because they still had to follow this open access, but they made the first semester like an entrance semester. And you had to pass exams at the end of the first semester, and only if you pass these exams, you're allowed to continue. So instead of having an exam for entrance, they do the exam now after the first semester. And that is the gap that you can see here, that step by step in different programs, more and more, they introduce these kind of knockout exams in the first semester. So we can see the economic cycle, what is happening in the business world, but we also see a policy cycle here, what different policy measures had an impact. Now I switch back to the success rates. Should have done this more smart, dropout success. Show you the different fields, and this is just by 4 fields. Humanities, engineering, natural sciences, and business, socioeconomics. And always looking on the gender rates, on age at entrance, different school types, and then if they immediately started studying after school or with a delay, like explained in the morning. And then you can see, for example, here in the socioeconomic fields, when you're older than 21, starting to study, your success rate really drops to nearly 0. So you have the right to go into, but you have practically has not many chances to really complete the studies. Unlike in the humanities, for example, there's a small decrease, but here, if you start studying with 30 years, you still have a similar, more or less similar chance of completion like a young person or so. And that is also visible by the different, by the different school types, for example, and sex. So males in humanities, males generally have a lower success rate, so it's not surprisingly. They nearly have it everywhere, but they, especially females, outperform them in humanities, but not so big difference in engineering, and no difference in science. And then again, in business, the females outperform the males. So it's also very different by field of study. And the black lines always show the ratios in the program that they really started. And then the gray line on top is if they switch the program. So in some fields, switching makes sense, and you increase your chances. And in some, actually the difference is not too high. Like here, even if you switch, if you're older, you're more likely to drop out. Here, if you don't graduate in your own program, and you're old and you switch, then you also drop out. So for them, the switch didn't make big difference. But you see also big gender difference, for example. For whom makes a switch sense, and for whom it doesn't have an impact. So it's just another idea on looking at that. And this is really work in progress. We only produced this 2-3 weeks ago, and this is only focusing on one university. And I think at the university, not everyone has seen this slide, so please don't tell everyone that I'm showing this here. This is now, we try follow up the students through the semesters, but including their exam activity, if they attend, if they earn some credit points, plus the matching with the social security system, and looking how, to what extent are they employed on the labor market. Because that is always the impression we had, that if the students have not enough time for studying, that's because of the pressure from the labor market. And that's what the students say in the survey. Why did you interrupt your studies? Then it's always labor market. Why did you progress so slow? Because of my employment, because of my jobs. And here again, we have the few ones here. The dark green is the few that graduated in the program they started. We are just looking on a certain program here. The green ones are, they are actively studying, so they earn some credit points, and they only work a little bit. No, they work more than during the whole semester. And that is the ones, the green one here, they are also actively studying, getting credit points, but they are not working or only a little bit working in the semester. Then we have those who switch the program or are enrolled in the same program, but additionally in another one. And they are not active in this program, but they are active in the other one. But again, those working hard are very few, and those not working are far more in the beginning semesters. Then those are the ones, they are not studying, they are enrolled, but they don't get any credit points, and they are only, they are hardworking. And the biggest group here on top, they are not studying and not working. And that was really a surprise. Because so far, we always, in research, the student union, but also the universities claimed that the working students, that is the reason why they gain so few credit points. That is, at least it is not true for those who begin. There must be some other reasons why you enroll at university and don't make any credits, but also you're not heavily engaged on the labor market. Okay, and those are the dropouts or the switches and so on. And for those universities we work with in this analysis, we do it really for every program. And when do you switch? What is the share of those earning credits, not earning credits? They sometimes feed it back to the curricula, change the curricula, then some years later we look again at these things. And so on. And always in all this data, hidden is a kind of a social background issue. Another topic, transition from bachelor to master by gender. We heard already in the morning that most of the students are females, most of the bachelor students are females, most of the master students are females, so check. When we look at our Austrian data over the years, we can see in the beginning, the introduction of the bachelor and master system, the transition rate was nearly 90%, and there was no gender difference. But now, several years later, the transition from bachelor, who graduated bachelor and then started studying a master, is decreasing. That was actually expected. so to say, when we introduced this bachelor-master system, because it was hoped that some of the bachelors will find a place on the labor market. But we see an increasing gap between males and females. So males continue studying, even if the females are more successful, and female transition rate is decreasing. So that was just the first snapshot. We did a lot of analysis with this, following from this, and actually it's not about gender in a hard sense, it's more about the field of study they enroll. If you look on the fields, then you can see that in engineering, still nearly 90% continue with the master, but in humanities, in art, in social, economic sciences, it already is down to 60%. We have far more men in engineering and far more females in humanities. So that is actually why the aggregate of everything looks like there's a widening gap by gender. That explains most of the difference, but if you look on each of the columns, then you can see that the male column is in all fields a little bit higher than of the females. So the field explains a lot, but not everything. There's still the rest that is has to do something with the gender. That was another way of analyzing. Another graduates, I do quite shortly. That is an example, just to introduce this complicated chart again, example from old diploma study in pharmacy. And the red line in the middle, that's the point of time when they graduated. And then on the axis, we have the month after graduation and the month before graduation. So here we track them 4 years before they graduate and 5 years after they graduate. And this is now the labor market data from the social security system. And the line, the curve shows you that's the share, the share of all the graduates from that semester who, what we call, are integrated in the labor market. So there's a status when you only earn a little bit, you don't have to pay tax, you don't pay social security, that is not counted, but employed, self-employed, public employment, whatsoever, that's all included here. And pharmacy is a very special case among all the studies, because you see before graduation, only between 10 and 15% are engaged in the labor market. And then immediately when they graduate, it jumps to more than 90%. Then it comes down a little bit. It's like a hill. After 1.5 years, it goes down a little bit, and then the line recovers again. And that is because if you graduate from pharmacy, you have to do work a year in a pharmacy, and to get really the certificate that you are allowed to open your own business. And the pharmacies have to accept the graduates. So they have a guarantee of getting this kind of first job that's kind of an extended training on the labor market. So that's no surprise that they are nearly 90%, because most of them do this, and it's really quickly. Every dot is, the difference between 2 dots is 2 months. So 2 months, 4 months after graduation, and usually they graduate in June, so they go on holiday 4 months. That means then in autumn they already have the job. Pharmacy is really a special case. Why are there so many peaks? That is when they job during holidays. Every dot are 2 months, so you can clearly see these were summer holidays and these are summer holidays, and there's a year between. Now, many different other. These are bachelors now, so not so long. And that is what I would call is a very traditional pattern. It looks a little bit like the pharmacy graduates, but only the transition to the labor market is not so quick, because they continue with the master program. And somewhere along this line, they graduate from the master, and only then they really integrate on the labor market. We see a lot of these holiday jobs. It's apart from the holidays, it's only 10–15% engaged in the labor market until graduation, and then doing master, that already starts increasing. Immediately with the graduation from bachelor, they start to engage more and more, and then everybody graduates from master at a different point in time, so that's why there's no kind of a peak when they all together graduate. That's quite a traditional pattern. Then we have those, they have already comparatively a high employment before graduation, so doing the bachelor study, and 4 years is actually the period, for some, this might be even the school time, because usually you can do the bachelor in 3 years. So 4 years before graduation, that could also be when they just have school. These are mostly programs that have something to do with business or IT, because the labor market demands so much from them that they are highly engaged. But it's also at the University of Music, it's singing. And the singers are also highly engaged on the labor market, already doing studies, because of course they get paid when they sing on stage. That actually, these traditional ones, they are mostly from the science fields. Then we have some, I call them, they are slowly integrating but steady. So it goes on and on and on and on. But after 5 years, they more or less reach the areas. But it goes slower. They, in the middle range engagement on the labor market doing studies, but then it takes a while. And the slowest guys here, that's the difference to the singers, that's science of music. So they're sitting in the classroom and study about making music. They take the longest part. And then similar to those is all the language studies. They also take very slowly and steady. At the end, it only depends. We have these for covering them for 10 years as well. They more or less, they're all catching up. Even humanities, you think they never will earn something. They do, but it takes far longer to integrate on the labor market. And that also is the field now, but you can do this with the social background and things as well. How? All what I've shown you now, and we have many more of these kind of examples. We can do this analysis for subgroups as well, gender, age, school types, that's what I showed, nationality, international students, where do the international students come from, that's all possible. We look at single programs. Only if they are really small and have only very few students, we look on the fields of study. And somehow we can already model the education background of parents, but now finally they changed the law and we will have this data available from next year on. And then we can do the same tracking by educational background of the parents. So that means it is possible to identify which group has bigger problems doing studies, and when, in the beginning, in the first year, in getting into higher education, or is it at the end, before the bachelor-master structure. In the diploma programs, we had a lot of dropouts in the end, because writing the diploma thesis was a big barrier for many, and then you can, with these tools, you can see, is it a barrier for all, equally a barrier, or more for males, more for females, more for working class kids, or for academic kids, and so on. But these mostly make sense when you really work together with the people from the faculty, and they make use in their daily program and in the curricula. Once you have established such a system, that is quite a cheap tool for monitoring. That is what Poland is doing. They produce 11,000, for 11,000 programs, they produce the charts focusing only on 5-6 indicators and sending it to all the programs in the country, 11,000. Because it's really easy. This kind of data is also a precondition for analyzing the situation of the students and to develop targeted measures. What to do in the first semester, what to do for certain groups of students, you can use these kind of data for. What is the precondition? When does it work? It only works if in the country every student has a unique personal ID number, and you keep this number for the rest of your life, whatever you do. When you switch the program, when you switch the university, you always are registered with the same student ID number. Only if this is the case, then we can track you throughout the system. The next thing is the universities must deliver the individual data, either to the statistical office or to the ministry. This is organized differently in all the countries, but the individual data for each student and for each semester. So we have this data on our PCs now for 15 years. We have about 350,000 students. That adds up to several millions of data lines, and then for analyzing the students. In Austria, this is all regulated by law. There's a huge law on study statistics and what the programs have, kind of data they have to deliver. And the ministry does some quality checks with the data, and then, only then, it goes to Statistics Austria and then to Eurostat and blah, blah, blah. But what the universities have to report, the data amount they have to report is huge, and based on the individual student. But the ministry will never receive the name of the student or the address of the student, and they do not receive the exam results. They are stored as well, but they are separated from all the other data. So ministry can play around with exam results, but not able to connect it with the other data to identify the persons. So there are different ways this is done. That was it. Thank you.